Welcome to the inaugural session of NDP Foundation and launch of a book called I Am Ashish to I Am. In few minutes, you will hear directly from Sri Ashish, a hardworking business person who pursued the business ideas, companies, and then got transformed into a spiritual person, Sri Ashish, over the last 10 years. While he will talk about his own journey and transformation, let me give you few aspects of his life today. Today, he is fully focused on spreading the message of non-dualism, imparting knowledge about self-realization. He has experienced what it feels like when you are in complete silence and aware of the self and nothing else. Today, nothing interests him but spirituality. Yet, he is in the world, but not of the world. And he jokingly says, my hashtag is open door. Anyone and everyone is saying for me, there's no difference between a family member, a friend, a stranger, a yes or a dog. He abides in himself and spreads the message that the only purpose of life is to know one's true self and nothing else. The NDP Foundation is global in scope, and its message is the awareness of the self-realization and universal consciousness. It empowers the individuals and help them discover who they already are. It brings the message of non-duality to everyone and imparts self-knowledge and remove the ignorance that is hiding the spiritual being that we all are. My name is Anil Joshi, and I am the author of I Am Ashish to I Am, and the president of the NDP Foundation. It is a serendipity that and how I met Ashish. I'm an entrepreneur, and I was introduced to Ashish as a venture capitalist advisor. We met over a Zoom meeting. I presented my business proposal to him. There were a number of questions related to how we wanted to grow, how much funds we needed, and what would be the uses of those funds. The conversation took about 45 minutes, and something very unusual happened at the end of that 45-minute conversation. Towards the end, I just asked him, Ashish, what do you do most of the days, most of your time? And then he started to talk about his pursuit, his passion, and what he has become from a business person and what interests him. It was all about spirituality. It was all about self-realization. It's all about discovering yourself. That was very close to me, those conversations, because from the very beginning, I had been involved in spiritual practices in my own ways, reading and grasping the scriptures and some of the learnings that have passed through the Hindu scriptures over a period of time. That conversation that we had initial 45 minutes over a Zoom call then turned into some meetings. And then we started to talk about why can't we actually capture his learnings and teachings in a book that can benefit millions of people around the world. And that's how this book, I Am Ashish to I Am, got born. And we spent over 2 years working on it, me understanding his teachings, what he has learned, and how we present it, such that it becomes easier and simpler for others to follow. In the process, I also got transformed. I remain a very driven entrepreneur, but I have, over the last 2 years, understood that the life events and the business events should not be able to perturb you or perturb yourself and the core happiness and peace that resides within you. I joined Sri Ashish and the NDP Foundation and very much passionate about spreading the word around the world. A little bit of my background. As I said before, I am the founder and CEO of a company called IntelliEdge. It's a healthcare startup. Prior to that, I was a professor of epidemiology and population health at Harvard School of Dental Medicine. But I have been a practitioner of meditation and ardent follower of Swami Vivekananda for a long time. The teachings of Bhagavad Gita and Yoga Sutras of Patanjali have guided my spiritual interests. And I'm fortunate that I have the best of both the worlds. I live in the world, as Sri Ashish says, but not of the world. I'm driven by my passion to grow the company, make it extremely successful, but at the same time, I understand the teachings of non-dualism, which means you remain happy, you remain peaceful inside, regardless of what happens in the outside world. Some of the teachings of Sri Ashish that we all can benefit from are as follows. Stress and sufferings are real when you're focused on the outer world. When the mind is quiet, they disappear. When fear, guilt, and worries bother you, sit in silence and let the thoughts pass by. Non-attachment to actions and outcomes. This will set you free. Try that. Believe in that. Practice that. And let go. The biggest fallacy of human history and human thinking is that I am the doer, which is actually not true. That is the biggest fallacy of human thinking. A little bit more about what Sri Ashish teaches and what we have written in the book. And I'm contrasting here for your benefit, and you will learn more about it when you read the book in a non-dual perspective. And you will see the change. You will be able to contrast the difference between the two. The dual perspective. A dual perspective means I am one, you are another. I am an ill, and there's a God. All that merges into this idea of non-dualism. So when you have a dual perspective, there is a constant change or fluctuations in our emotions. In a non-dual sense, you have a constant peace. In non-dual perspective, you have differentiation in people, and you classify people, you judge people based upon their stature, their achievements, and what they do. In non-dual perspective, you're one with all. It doesn't matter because you and the other one is the same. There's no difference. There is no duality in that. Our negative emotions like anger, greed, jealousy, guilt, and shame, they all go away and the calmness prevails. Our stress, worries, anxiety that keeps us perturbed and disturbed go away, and we are in constant bliss and joyful state. You learn all of this in a book that we took 2 years working with Sri Ashish. There are many questions that came to my mind, and there are many questions that I believe millions of people around the world will have. They will find answers to those questions. We talk about questions about God, prayers, self-realization, happiness, how to reconcile what we do in the world and what spirituality tells us to do and practice. All of that is present in this book, I Am Ashish, Do I Am. While we wait for this book to come out in the marketplace and in your hands, please join me in welcoming the founder of NDP Foundation and the messenger of self-realization, Sri Ashish, on the stage.
Namaskar, everybody, and welcome to this inaugural session. Thank you, Anilji, for your kind words. It's been a long journey since since I was born. I guess I would say. Um, I don't want to bore you guys. I think the long speeches are not my kind of style. But I believe I've been told to talk about my spiritual journey and how I landed up here. For those who don't know me, I was born in Kolkata in 1974, and the day of my birth, it was actually Bengal Band. What that means is that the entire state of West Bengal was actually under curfew. So it was very difficult for us to find a doctor. And my parents used to tell me that when the doctor gave birth to me, she told my mom that, Mr. Jain, Nakshal has been born to you. What that means is a revolutionary. I don't think they realize that this is the kind of revolution that, will go through, when I grow up. So anyways, both my parents are gone. My life started, it was a very privileged life. Our father did well to provide for us. And after my schooling in Kolkata, I'd actually landed up in the United States to do my undergraduate in electrical engineering. I'm actually a chip designer by academics. After finishing my schooling here in the United States, my father actually attended my graduation, and he emotionally blackmailed me to go back. So I returned back to India in 97. And, he had said, look, this is a wonderful thing. I've actually set up a big factory for you. So why don't you come back? And I said, okay, let's go. But this was like a little hut that he had actually called a factory. It was in the middle of nowhere. Gurgaon at that time, for people who know about Gurgaon in India, was just actually a Gao village. Everything else was being, just constructed. So here I was, US returned. It was June 9th. It was really hot. For people who know, it was about 47, maybe about 110 degrees Fahrenheit. There was construction everywhere, so there was dust everywhere. He had imported these 3 CNC machines to produce blades, steam turbine components. There was no power, so the CNC machines were actually useless. And there was no water. So here he put me in the morning and he said, Ash, there you go. This is where you're going to start your journey from. So the next 6 months were really pretty crazy in the house. We used to have fights every day. I would come home and I would say, Dad, you ruined my life. You got me back and here I am. And, he would say things to me and, we were constant loggerheads. So my mom one day said, look, you guys have to stop this. So my father was a very practical man. So he said, okay, look, Ash, this happened. It is what it is. Why don't you give it another shot, 6 months? And if it doesn't work, you do whatever you want to do. And those 6 months turned out to be 20 years. So I actually stayed back. I started a lot of other businesses. I started, I was an entrepreneur. So my entrepreneurial spirit took me to a lot of places. For the next, I would say 11 years, I built businesses in tech, telecom, and then eventually I settled down on energy and renewable energy. I went through, any normal person does, right? Building a family, trying to create wealth, trying to create a lifestyle for your family, which is good, affluent, what, our father had provided for as well. So, we went through, I went through a lot of struggles to do it. And that's what my life was till 2008. that's who I was, traveling first class, traveling actually a lot. My family was here. I was married in the United States, so I was living in the US, but all the businesses were in India, so I was going back and forth every alternate month. I would be in India, here. And life was as normal as everybody else has, ups and downs, lots of great times, lots of, you know, uh, downfall as well. But it was full of stress. It was full of worry. It was full of anxiety. It was like any other, day to day lives that you have. But it was okay. And then a sudden turn happened. So I went through from 2008 to 2016. So for people who know me well, within family and friends, or close friends, now it was the time from 8 to 16, which was about 8 years, was really tragic for me. One personal thing after another happened. So first, it started with uh, my mother being diagnosed with cancer. Um, she was actually misdiagnosed, and uh, when I went back in 2008, the doctors had given us 6 months to live. So I, rushed her back to the United States. I spent about a year taking care of her. And then in '09, when she passed, I actually went back to, join my father again in business. But, my mother's death actually took me down some very dark places. She was very young. And, I couldn't understand why such a wonderful person, such a wonderful spirit would be taken away from the planet. So, my anger, basically turned inward. Um, as a child, we were always taught about that there is a God, any Hindu family, religion takes a pretty, big part and role. And what happened is that, uh, uh, my belief was not in religion, but what my belief was in God, that, if you do well, there is a God that will award you. And if you do bad things, he will punish you. But now, once my mother passed, that faith in God started to deplete. I got angry. I got very angry, and that angry turned inwards. So, and then my father was also not grieving at that time. So I began to spend a lot more time in India with him. And then, with the grief and the business starting taking a turn, we eventually had the next tragic thing was that, the business started to fail. We started to lose capital. My father started to, lose his money, started to reinvest in the business. And that was not something that was good. So, come in 2000, by 2014, the business had completely failed. It was a big business. So to close it out was also, it took a long time. So at that point, I told my father, look, this thing is like the Titanic now. It's sinking. And if we don't do something about this, we're all going to sink with it. So we actually filed for bankruptcy. And what that did was that whatever my father and I had built over the years was all gone. We had complete financial ruin. This in turn actually took a big, big toll on my father's health. And in 2015, he too was diagnosed with cancer. So at that point, since I was on both sides, and now I had, two young kids, there was a lot of strain that was happening on me. I was here, I was there, but I was nowhere. So I told my father, I said, look, I'm not able to, you know, balance this anymore. I don't feel that I'm doing any justice, and this is not working for me. So why don't we close everything out here? There's nothing left here. And why don't you move with me to the United States? So after a lot of pursuing, he was not happy. He kept saying, Ash, are you sure you want to do this? And I said, look, there's no other choice. So he actually moved, and we moved in the middle of 2015, not realizing that within the next 2 months, he lost, another tragedy would hit. And this was what really triggered, um, the introspection and start of my spiritual journey. It was 2 months into, we moved. Colleen, my ex-wife, she basically, I guess, had enough with me, so she decided to just walk out of the door. So that actually, that those 6 months from when that happened was really the turning point in my life. Um, and for the first 6 months, um, I could understand what happened. My belief till then was that the center uh, of my being was my family, was my home. So I always tell people that you could, at that point, send me anywhere. You could send me to war, and I would fight, knowing that at the end of the day, I would come home to my family. Now that center was gone. It was in a moment. It was shattered. So the question that arose in me was, if this is not my center, then what is? And I looked at various options. I looked at, trying to do transcendental meditation. Meditation was a big thing. I was like, let me try this. I don't know what it is, but let me go and try this. So, no peace. I couldn't find anything. I tried therapy. Nothing. I used to cry a lot. I used to weep a lot. My sister would tell me she was visiting at that point, and all I did was cry and weep. I couldn't understand what was going on, and this continued for 6 months. At one point, I was not eating. I had lost all my health. There was no business. My heart was in nothing. I had no direction. Complete no hope. Didn't know what to do. Didn't know where to go from here. So one night I just prayed that was around December of 2015. And I said, hey, Lord, you got me this time. You trumped me. I don't know where to go from here. I don't know what to do. And I really need help. And I went to bed. And the next morning, something very interesting happened. I woke up with two things. I woke up, one, with SRF imprinted on my mind. It was like literally stamped. It was as if somebody had come in the night and stamped it. And the other is the country of Chile. I don't know what the country of Chile has significance, or what will happen. I've never been to Chile, but we'll find out. Time will tell us. But however, so usually, you get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you have coffee, and you forget what you dreamt of. But I couldn't shake this. SRF was there, and it kept bothering me. So I said, let me look at what this is. So I Googled SRF, and I came to this website called Self-Realization Fellowship. And I had never, before this time, there was nothing spiritual about me. There was nothing I knew about spirituality. On the contrary, I used to actually make fun of all these gurus that we had heard of in India. So when I looked at this, and I looked at Paramahansa Yogananda's face, something resonated in me. And, I remember that Paramahansa Yogananda at some point had come in my dreams as well. And I did not know who he was. But this face actually matched, this person that I was seeing on the website. So I said, okay, I looked at his book, which is a very world-famous book called Autobiography Yogi. And for those who have never, have not read this, it's highly recommended by me. Even if you're not getting on your spiritual journey, it's just a wonderful read. So I ordered the book. And once the book arrived, I couldn't put it down. Now, people who know me, I'm not an avid reader. I don't, in my lifetime before reading Autobiography Yogi, I probably had read like 5 or 10 books. But this really invoked and awaked something in me. I could put it down. I read the book in 7 days. And after that, I read, over the next 3 years, I read pretty much, I would say, 50 to maybe 70 books on self-realization. I read it all. I couldn't get enough of it. I read, I ate, I slept, I dreamt self-realization. And that's all I wanted to know. I wanted to understand what truly it meant. So I began to start practicing meditation. Paramahansa Yogananda had said that after his death, the guru, shishya, or we say the guru disciple relationship, will be his teachings, and not there won't be any more physical guru part of the foundation. So I ordered some lessons. I couldn't make the trip to LA. Was quite broke, didn't have money. So, I basically ordered the home lessons. And these lessons were actually designed by him to condition your mind and body to basically get started on, your spiritual journey, to start the meditation, or it basically starts Kriya Yoga, which is the center focal point of SRF's teachings. So it took me a long time. I never done meditation before. I did not know what it means to condition mind and body. It's like as if, if you're going to go to become an Olympic athlete, this is what Dr. Joshi and I have spoke about. You actually have to condition. You just can't land up and jump in the pool and say you're going to become an Olympic swimmer. So these are designed to actually get you, conditioned for starting the Kriya Yoga. So there are about 52 of these, 52 weeks, but it took me 18 months. I started these to complete. And then what Paramahansa Yogananda had said is that, look, yoga, if you understand it, is actually a science. There are 4 pillars of yoga: Karma Yoga, Dhyan Yoga, Gyan Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. But in order to follow any of these paths, it's basically a science. So what that means is, in scientific terms, that if you do something which is said and it is repeatable, if the methods or the steps are provided and you do it and the result is always the same, then it's science. And over the years, when I read, I was looking at these different, masters, and they were kind of saying that they had the same experience by doing the same thing. So he said, look, if you, even Kriya is a mathematical formula, because it's scientifically proven that if you do 8 hours of Kriya Yoga every day, it takes about 30 seconds to do one Kriya. Then in 3.5 years, you should achieve enlightenment. And if you do it for 4, then 7, and so on. So as I, started Kriya Yoga in 2019, I got inducted in this. After doing it for a few months, I'm like, this is not moving fast enough, Lord. It's a thought raising me. Like, look, this is not, they started me with 14 of these, these Kriya Yogas. So if I'm only doing 14 a day, 7 minutes a day, it's going to take me a couple more lifetimes to do it. And I'm now thirsty. I'm like, I'm addicted to self-realization. So I'm like, I need to find another way. And as I started to think more about it, one fine day in November of 2019, I was looking at some quotes. And the first quote that came around, which was again interesting, this is the first quote that came. Usually I used to look at quotes and Ramana never popped up, but the first quote that came was of a sage called Ramana Maharishi. Now, Ramana Maharishi was actually known as a Jivan Mukta. He was known as Bhagwan. He was reincarnation of Brahman, as his followers, believed on earth. So I looked at his quote, and his first quote actually really resonated with me. So I looked at a few more, and I'm like, this is making so much sense to me. And I'd forgotten that even Paramahansa Yogananda had actually gone and seen him, and he had, referred to him in his book Autobiography. So Ramana was known as the Swami on the hill. There is a hill in Tiruvannamalai where his ashram is. The entire township is actually, built around the hill. And Ramana believed that this is the hill which is the center of the universe. This is where Brahman actually resides. Everything, gets projected or pushed out from this hill. So he never, ever moved in his lifetime 2 kilometers away from this hill. He was, always there. He started with living in a cave on the hill, then came down, and eventually they built an ashram on the foothills. So I now looking and interested, now something, again had awakened in me, and I wanted to get to his ashram as soon as possible. So on looking at his ashram, again, I found something very interesting, that it was only 165 kilometers from where my sister Malini has been married and living for the last 25 plus years. So I called Malini and I said, look, Malini, I want to get here. I want to go, and she's like, what are you talking about? Where are you going? What are you doing? What is this all about? Have you gone mad? Because she had still not kind of comprehended and appreciated at that time that what are the changes and the transformation that was happening. She was seeing certain things, but she was not able to kind of really truly understand what was going on with it. So I said, look, give it to my brother-in-law. And I said, Vinay ji, I'm coming on so and so day. I want to go so and so. He didn't even look up. He just said, perfect, just come, I'll take you. So here I'm telling my sister, look, we're not asking you to join us. You chill. We are actually, the passenger is ready. The driver is ready to take me. The destination is all set up. So I landed up in February 2020, and something very interesting happened. My sister joined us. So after saying she's not going to go, my cousin from Bombay, who's also kind of followed, path of, spirituality, also joined us. And the four went. And then as we are driving into Tiruvannamalai, as we're coming into the town, the hill is right there. So the moment I saw the hill, automatically the spine, my body became straight, the spine became straight, and a current started to flow up and down my spine. So I was like, that experience truly said, look, I think I'm home. I think I found, my master who would now take me to the end. We spent a few days at the ashram. And ever since my visit to the ashram first time, all my questions and doubts were actually answered. Ramana actually taught something different from what Paramahansa Yogananda and the other gurus were teaching. He taught what is Jnana Yoga, and his method was self-inquiry. He basically said, look, in this today contemporary world, it's not possible for people to follow the arduous path of the Jnana Yoga if they truly followed it, which, Seth Patanjali, the Yoga Sutra, or the father, Yoga Sutra, it's an eightfold path. And a lot of people have this misconception that they start with meditation first or do asanas and yogas, the stretching exercises. But truly, if you follow the Jnana Yoga to basically understand and become one with your true nature, or, follow it for self-realization, then you actually have to follow each step, and you have to go through all the steps, starting with yamas, which are 5. Then you have 5 niyamas, so the don'ts and the do's. Then comes the asana. And asana is not, the asanas that are being taught in yoga are meant to, again, condition your body so that you can now sit almost 3 hours in the lotus position. And that's called perfection in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. And then once you've perfected that, you're ready for pranayama, which is breath control, which is what most people are now teaching. And then you go into, once you do pranayama, now you're ready for the mind to go, pratyahara, which is interiorization of the mind. Once that is perfected, then you go to dharana, single point concentration, and then you go to dhyan, which is meditation. So dhyan is actually the 7th. Meditation is the 7th step right before samadhi, which is self-absorption. So it's not easy. It's very difficult in today's day and age for people who are so entangled and whose minds are so engrossed in day to day. The focus of the mind is looks for instant gratification. You're constantly moving. So how do you go through this path? So Ramana said, look, let me teach you a shortcut. Let me teach you a quicker way. Why don't you hit the root cause? Why don't you cut the root cause of all this problem? And what is the root cause? It's your ego, the individuality, your I. So why don't you question this I? And that was his method, self-inquiry, Atma Vichar. So as you question with the question, who am I? And you constantly do this, for every thought that arises, ask the question, who is this thought arising to? And the mind is going to say, look, it's arising to me. Then ask the question, who is this, me or I? And as you go deeper, you can't find this I, because this I actually has no substantial existence. It does not exist. It's only that the mind has created this individuality or this separate being. So he said, as you keep questioning, and with every thought, this becomes an automatic process. And with this automatic process, what will happen one fine day is forget about the questions, but the questioner itself will dissolve. A lot of people actually find this method a bit hard because they focus on the questions. It's not about the questions, it's actually about the questioner. Because once the questioner dissolves, everything that the questioner has built for itself, which is your I, everything that this relative, or this I has built as relative reality, your attachments, your family, your connections, your work, it's all related to this I. So once this identification, or the false identification as we call it, goes away, everything else, the superstructure of this relative reality actually dissipates. It dissolves. And what remains then is what you always were, your own true nature. So I always tell people that self-realization is not something new to be attained or achieved. It's always there. You've just forgotten because you've now identified with the dream drum, or you've identified with this false I that's there. But once you understand that this false I actually is illusory, it's an illusion, and you basically start settling back into your own self, you find that it's actually not there. There's nothing there. Which is why then a lot of people have asked, self-realized masters, hey, once you became self-realized, what did you do? They said, we just laughed. We had a hearty laugh and we had a cup of tea, because in reality, this is actually a joke. It's not, when you go watch a movie, you get engrossed and you get entangled in the movie because you identify with the movie. But once you come out, you laugh, you say, it was just a movie, you forget, you move on. Life actually is that way. And if you understand it and you implement this understanding and you experience life that way, from there comes complete freedom, because now you're not attached or entangled in, your actions or the outcomes of those actions. So I started following self-inquiry since then. And Ramana also said that self-inquiry, all of these paths eventually lead to surrender. For him, surrender was, you start with surrendering to God. Here, surrender actually is unconditional surrender. Most of us basically said, God, I'll keep the good stuff with me and I'll surrender all the bad things to you. But that's not the case. You have to have unconditional, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything has to be surrendered. So he said all paths eventually at the end lead to bhakti yoga, or surrender. And what that means eventually is to truly understand and know who you truly are. Surrender means that. And the only way to do that is by surrendering everything that your I or your ego has actually built for itself. Everything has to go. Everything that you learn, everything that you've done, all your beliefs, all your dogmas, all your preconceived notions, everything has to go. All attachments have to go. So I know it's very difficult for people to let go, but that's one of the biggest things I tell people is once you let go, don't be scared, don't be fearful, because that fear and that, being scared of letting go itself is an illusion, right? And that's how your mind keeps you in control. It tries to keep you attached because you have the fear of letting go. Hey, if I let go, what will happen to me? And that itself is that barrier. So self-realization, there's nothing new to be got, nothing new to be achieved, nothing new to be attained. This is a process of letting go and removal. So what happened by following these methods, I followed these for a long time. I started these, and what I did was I actually combined. I said, look, what if I combine what Ramana was saying and what I had already learned from Paramahansa Yogananda, and do all three together? And that's how I started, that's how my journey, basically, started exponentially rocketing up. And I was doing self-inquiry, surrender, and Kriya Yoga. And I found tremendous benefits of this. I started to see a complete change and transformation in me. Calmness started to prevail most of my days, most of my life. There was peace within. And the first experience of nothingness, which is basically a base of existence, what Ramana had said, that if you do this, you would find that there's nothing there, and that, your true nature of your being is actually silent, and it's thought-free, and it's still. There's nothing going on. It's just shunya, as the scriptures have said it. So I had a brief experience of that right after my first visit to Ramana's ashram in 2020. We had actually gone to Pondicherry to see Sri Aurobindo's ashram as well during our visit. In the hotel room, I had a very short experience of nothingness. But when you are touched by this, that even a few seconds of this experience actually stays with you, it's indescribable, but it remains. So as if, it's like a tiger who's tasted blood. So it's very joyful. So I had that. And then I had, as I practiced more and more, I had two more of these experiences back to back. And I had one in my old house in 2021, followed by another one in my new house. And these experiences stayed longer with me. So um, what these did was, when these experiences happen, you are now touched by the source, and it's something which is incomparable. I don't know how to describe it. I've told Anilji a lot of times, it's just undisturbed peace, but he can say, what is the limit of this peace? How big is it? And I always tell him that, look, the only way to know this is to experience it. And the only way to experience this is to implement these understandings in your daily life. And a lot of people, understand, but don't implement. They get stuck in, just the understanding and the intellectual conversations. But what they don't do is say, look, don't get into intellectual conversations with me. That's fine. Arguments are not prevalent anymore in me. So, but if you have faith and you understand this and you imbibe this knowledge, then, implement this and see for yourself. You don't have to believe me. I basically read these, I deep dive into these, I then implemented these in my life, and this is what I experienced, and this is what I can tell you. You may have different experiences, but till you don't do it, you would not know. But I can guarantee you, and I can vouch for this, that if you do these the way they're supposed to be done, you will experience your true nature. You will experience Shumnata. So this, as this events happen, what started from there was a force current that started mighty, but now it is intense. And this was a force current that actually, pulled you. It's not an outward moving force current. It's actually an inward pulling force current. And this started to keep me further inward, start to take me inward and keep me more centered. When this happened, the mind started to disintegrate. Things became much clearer. The hold that the mind had on my life started to now break away. The worldly barriers that I had started to break away. The attachments that I had started to break away. And my life became extremely peaceful, purely joyful. It was, and then I started to have these experiences more and more as time went on. And today, where I stand, you know, it's unchanging bliss. It's permanent. This energy, this force current is just, that's what drives my life. It keeps me centered. It keeps me knowing what is real and unreal, and keeps me completely non-attached to things. So, this experience has been tremendous, and now I understand that those 7-8 years of tragedy, where it was a complete removal and disintegration of my ego, of what had been built by my ego. And I can tell you, my ego was very big. You can ask a lot of people in this hall who actually, or people on this call who have actually known me. It was completely destroyed. So it was difficult while I was in the storm, but now when the eye of the storm, like, I'm gone and it's gone, now I understand how beautiful life is. So I can truly tell you that it's been a wonderful journey and a wonderful experience. And when I met Dr. Joshi in 2021, he was kind enough to travel, as he mentioned earlier. He had started by trying to see how he could raise capital for his business. but he landed up, in my house in 2 weeks from that conversation. A lot of people tell me they'll show up, but he actually did. And after a few hours of our conversation, he said, "Why did you write a book?" And my neighbor used to tell me all the time, Howard and I used to go for walks, and he would say, "Why would you write a book? Actually, this is fantastic. Your passion, your commitment to this thing is tremendous. I love it when we go for our walks. You explain this to me so simply. Why don't you write a book?" And I would say, I tried, but I couldn't. And when Dr. Joshi offered to write the book, I said, Nikyo Puj, as we say in Hindi, be my guest. Wonderful. And it's been 2 years since we've been on down this road. The book is off. The manuscript's almost finished. I believe it's supposed to be launched soon. And what actually made me very happy while writing this book with Dr. Joshi was that he started down this path. So I always tell him that even if one person, reads your book and starts on the path, my job is done. So as far as I'm concerned, my job is done because Dr. Joshi started. But what Dr. Joshi and the others wanted was that, look, just the way the knowledge was imparted to them or to him, we should now open this out to as many people as possible. And I said, look, I agree. So I think we founded this foundation in 2023. Dr. Joshi is the president of the foundation. My sister is also on the board and the vice president of the foundation. Shaman is also on the board of the foundation, is a very good friend of mine, and who was actually responsible for introducing Dr. Joshi to me. And the mission of the foundation is purely to spread awareness and the message of non-dualism and self-realization as experienced and learned by me. So it's about my learnings, my experiences, my findings, what I found in the wealth of information that is available in all our teachings. It doesn't matter whether it's Hinduism or whether it is Christianity or whether it's Islam or Judaism or Buddhism. What I found in all of these teachings was interesting, that the underlying essence, the teachings of all the masters was one and the same. It's not different. It's again our individualities that have created this differentiation over the years, and people have used, these teachings and then twisted them, to suit their agendas. But in reality, they're all one and the same. So what we said was, these teachings are all over the place. There's so much going on in the world. It's all fragmented. People don't have the time. So why don't we, simplify these teachings and then put it in a way that can, become understandable in simple terms. And Dr. Joshi has done a wonderful job in trying to reconcile, the dual or the duality perspective with the non-duality perspective. So I think you'll find it a very interesting read. And then the last thing that we've done also is to take these different paths, and then I've created a 3-4 path of, understanding, implementation, and direct experience, which again, I've tried to simplify my learnings and my experiences, because I tried during those 7-8 years of my journey, I've actually tried everything. I tested it out. I tried it because I also did not take it at face value. I just did not believe. I said, look, what these are saying, let me test it. Let me try it out. Let me experience it, and then say, okay. So that's the purpose of the foundation. And the goal is to get to as many people as possible, people who will want to listen. Anybody who would want to listen, may want to listen, and not want to listen. Our job is to basically impart this wisdom and knowledge to as many people as possible, either through the digital media. When Buddha and Ramana were alive, they did not have the option to, or the technology available to impart this. So we today have, we're using, technology today, which is in the metaverse, which another good friend of mine, Ido Segal, has been kind enough to help us do this. So it's wonderful. We are in a super new age where technology can really allow us to take this message to, as more and more people around the world. So removes the barrier and the limitations that we had in those days. So we're going to have a digital strategy around, and then I think the foundation and the board members also eventually want a physical presence available where people can come and meet and discuss anything and everything that they would like, whether it's related to their spiritual journey or whether it's related to their life or anything under the sun. So having said that, I'll leave you with a quote from Sri Verma, who was another self-realized master. She said, "For those who know me, I'm one with them. For those who want to know me, I am very close to them. And for those who do not know me, I'm a beggar before them." Om Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you, Sri Ashish, for sharing your journey and transformation. Before we end the session, I would like to remind you all that the book would be available globally starting 1st September 2023 on Amazon.com, with the exception of India, where it would be available by the 15th of September on Amazon.in, Flipkart, and on our publisher's website, notionpress.com. Alternatively, you could visit our website, ndpfoundation.com, which contains location-specific information for you to purchase a copy. We hope you enjoy reading the book and will spread the word around to your family and friends. Please do keep an eye out on our book tours in India between November 5th to December 15, 2023. The book will also be available in 15 bookstores across major Indian cities starting November 2023. We are also planning monthly satsang sessions for which you can register on our website. We have put up a monthly calendar in the various dates. The session is primarily structured in the question and answer format with Sri Ashish and aims to be conversational so as to for him to answer as many questions as you may have on the subject matter, either related to the book or otherwise. The first satsang session is on 17 September 2023. You could also schedule a one-on-one time with Sri Ashish for a personal discussion. He loves talking to people and is always available to engage in a conversation. Lastly, please feel free to reach us with any questions or comments through our website or via email at info@ndpfoundation.com. We can also be reached through our social media handles listed on the screen. We hope that you will join us in our movement to spread both awareness and Sri Ashish's message to as many people who are willing to listen and are encouraged to start your own journey to self-realization. Thank you once again for being here with us. Love and blessings to all of you.